So far, we've talked about, identifying what a project might look like. We've talked about determination of how those processes are developed to maintain and direct resources, budget role, timeline. What I'd like to get into next is the notion of using resources in a project format versus staff augmentation. When is it appropriate to look at one or the other?
Well, first of all, understanding the expertise that are involved. So when you are looking at your internal employees, do they have the expertise to be able to do it in a timely fashion?
Right.
Or will they be able to deliver high quality product? Those are some of the questions that you need to start asking yourself, because sometimes you might want to develop them, but I don't know if even having them develop is the best answer either. And so that's when staff augs really come into play, is bringing in somebody who has the expertise.
Okay.
That they'll be able to mentor even your internal developers, that they'll be able to document it and provide you and start your path down in the needed deliverable that you would like to have.
So one of the challenges that I think our clients have are whether to utilize resources in a more formalized direction from us versus them doing it through them, right? And to me, that's more project management versus staff aug. One of the areas that I think they and many people have a question about is, when is it appropriate to do one or the other?
Well, first of all, when you've got your project in mind and you want to be able to implement it, and you've gone through all of those steps that are needed, and somebody's presented a plan to you, you can then look at it and say, do I have the internal resources that are needed?
The internal resources.
You're right.
Yeah.
And then, or do I have the expertise that are needed?
Okay.
Or help coaching my development team to come into place. And that's sort of where you can bring in some assets that are needed for project management, for Scrum Masters, for things down that road.
Right.
Also, the nice thing is bringing those people in to help with your staff internally, is you're helping grow them. Yeah. But in case you might need some extra help, you can bring in a staff aug, to bring in those and sort of put them into the place that is really needed.
And really the staff aug resource is one who's more taking direction from the client, realistically speaking.
Yeah.
And their value is that they're not necessarily specific to a regimen or a scope per se, but they're really drawing upon them and their talent sets.
Yeah.
So, obviously if you have a certain type of talent, I suppose it could be used in a broader perspective underneath the client's direction versus maybe more refined in the scope delivery.
Yeah.
I know you've had experience, and I'm hitting you cold on this one. How do you address a scenario or a situation when fundamentally in a project your people just aren't doing what they need to do? What is tough love versus non-tough love? I'm going to put you on the spot because I want to get an insight on what behavior and management would look like within a project.
It's really important that you look at the individual, right? Can they grow? Can they take direction? And if you can start answering those questions, can they grow and can they take direction? Then you can start coaching them along. But sometimes you've just got to remove them from the picture.
Yeah. And
bring in somebody that's going to help supply the need and that are willing to help you succeed. That is really important, I think, as you're bringing in individuals, that that as you're bringing in a staff aug or bringing in CR&T, that we're also wanting to see you succeed. And so we're going to make sure we're going to hold your hand along that process of...
I'm going to go deeper. I'm going to say, in this particular situation, you're being met by some consistent roadblocks, challenges. How many times at bat do you give a person?
I'm more of a little bit picky, and I try to not give them very many chances because it only delays.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And so you're going to miss your whole mark if
Right.
that's the case.
Right.
And so you have to remove them as quickly as possible.
That's got to be tough, though.
Yeah.
I mean, because you're sitting there and you're working with these individuals, and obviously it's their livelihood, so I imagine it's got to be really difficult to be able to deliver that information, but it's necessary.
Yes. And as quickly as possible, especially as you're going through, hopefully you're following that process and you'll see that quickly. So you can hopefully change their behavior before it gets into the extreme.
Yeah.
But that's going to happen, right? People are just not going to develop to the standard that you need to succeed in your project. And removing those individuals and bringing in somebody that's going to help you succeed is really important.
I'm reminded about that, like that axiom, which is tough love, and so to speak. You're not removing somebody from a job or a role because you're punishing them or you're citing their failure. You're giving them the opportunity to do something that they might be better at or work more productively in.
I think that's really important, is to really look at that individual and sometimes sitting down with that individual and asking them those questions of like, hey, is this something that you really are passionate about, right? Do you care about this? And they might be just showing up to get a paycheck, right? And so you need to go, hold on, we might be able to use you over here or in a different place, but we really need to succeed here.
Okay, so things have gone well. You've gotten through the vast meat of the project. Now comes the whole timeline for onboarding and offboarding.
Exactly. When you get done with that project, hopefully it's well documented, hopefully you've put together, but you should start looking at removing your resources that are no longer needed. With a contractor, we always know that it's going to be a ramp up and a ramp down period. The important part during that ramp up and ramp down is you're ramping down correctly, that you're prepared to lose the resources.
Yeah.
And that's okay, because we need to look at it and say, we need to now start selling our product, and before we can continue on down the next phases, we need to be able to have the money to be able to take care of it. Right. And so you need to make sure that during that ramp down period,
that's interesting you said that.
Got the right information to have people walk away.
See, that's an insight that I'm glad we brought up. As you close off a project, it's as important to know the post-sale, post-work budget and responsibilities as completing the project in the first place. And I've seen clients where they get bit by that, where they go into a project and the estimation is X with little effort to really size up, the ramp down period and what that's going to look like as a behavior and a cost structure.
Yeah, it's forgotten so many times, that ramp down period. And they just cut off people and then walk away, and then they lose all of that information.
Yeah,
right?
They do.
The other important part is that ramp down period is that we know that software development only lasts 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
When you're done with a project, you should then reapproach it 3 to 5 years down the road. And it's important that when your ramp down period is, you're also thinking about the next ramp up period. The next time you're going to bring on those resources to really help out during the next phase.
So
or
keeping
even
continuity is important too.
Yeah.
Maintaining that connection and that follow through.
Yep.
That's interesting.